Imagine a woman so hunted, so controlled, so watched, that the only escape she could find was upward into a tiny, airless crawl space where no human was ever meant to survive. This is the true story of Harriet Jacobs, a woman born enslaved in Edenton, North Carolina, who outsmarted the man who stalked her by hiding in an attic so small she couldn't sit, stand, or stretch. She lived there for 7 long years. Harriet didn't always know she was enslaved. During her early childhood, she was treated with rare kindness by her first mistress. But when that woman died, Harriet was given away like furniture. Her new master, Dr. Flint, became obsessed with her. He followed her, whispered threats, and promised to isolate her in a private cabin where no one could protect her. Harriet understood exactly what that meant. At 21, she made her decision. She vanished. Dr. Flint searched ships, docks, swamps, and plantations. He sent letters across states. He questioned neighbors. He believed she had run north. But Harriet had done something he would never expect. She had hidden a few feet above him in the cramped attic of her grandmother's house. It was the most dangerous place she could be, and the safest. Her life as a ghost began there. The attic was barely larger than a coffin stretched sideways. Harriet couldn't sit upright. She couldn't kneel. The ceiling pressed against her back, forcing her into a permanent crouch. Dust thickened the air until breathing felt like pulling air through cloth. In summer, the heat gathered under the roof until the attic felt like an oven. Sweat soaked her clothes and left her dizzy. In winter, icy winds slipped through cracks in the boards, chilling her body so deeply she could barely stop her teeth from chattering. But the silence was the harshest part. Beneath her, life continued. Her children played in the yard. She watched them through a tiny peephole she carved in the wood. She memorized every movement, how they ran, how they laughed, how they looked toward the house, wondering where she had gone. Harriet wanted to call out, but one whisper could end everything. Dr. Flint visited constantly. Harriet felt his footsteps through the floor. His voice carried venom as he vowed he would find her. He searched the house repeatedly, but never the attic. To him, the space was too small, too impossible. No one would live there, but Harriet did. The attic broke her body, but it protected her life. And she held on to that trade with unshakable resolve. Harriet refused to let the world forget her. Even in the attic's darkness, she found a way to send messages beyond her wooden prison. She wrote letters lying on her side, cramped, her joints stiff, her fingers numb from cold. The notes were short, folded tightly, and entrusted to her grandmother, who delivered them with absolute secrecy. Harriet signed them with initials or vague symbols, anything to avoid raising suspicion. These letters traveled north, carried by trusted friends and abolitionist networks. They painted a picture of Harriet living far away, somewhere free, somewhere unreachable. Her words were strategic. Every line was designed to mislead Dr. Flint. And it worked. Rumors spread that she had been seen in the north, boarding ships or traveling by train. Dr. Flint chased every whisper, growing angrier each time. Harriet listened from above as he vented his frustration in her grandmother's home. She lay perfectly still while he searched rooms, opened closets, and interrogated relatives. He believed she was alive. He believed she was nearby. But he never looked above the ceiling he stood under. Through the peephole, Harriet watched her children grow older and taller. She memorized every subtle change in their faces. Their voices were the only warmth she had. She was a ghost sending letters, and the world had begun to believe the ghost lived far away. Years passed before a message reached Harriet that felt like a lifeline. A friend in the North had contacted a network of abolitionists willing to help her escape. The letter carried new possibilities, a chance to finally break free, to stand upright again, to hold her children without hiding. But hope came with danger. For Harriet to act on this plan, she would need to leave the attic. She would need to move. She would need to risk everything. Meanwhile, Dr. Flint intercepted a different letter addressed to Harriet's brother. Though it revealed nothing about Harriet's hiding place, it reignited his suspicion. He became convinced the family was still in contact with her. His rage returned with full force. He threatened the family, claiming they were hiding her. He spoke of seizing her children, selling them, punishing them. Harriet listened from above as her children cried, as her grandmother pleaded, as Dr. Flint stormed from room to room. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She pressed her forehead to the wooden beams and forced herself not to scream. This was the breaking point. The attic had protected Harriet, but it no longer protected her children. That night she understood something clearly. She could not stay. She had to leave before Dr. Flint's cruelty consumed the people she loved. Years passed before a message reached Harriet that felt like a lifeline. A friend in the North had contacted a network of abolitionists willing to help her escape. The letter carried new possibilities, a chance to finally break free, to stand upright again, to hold her children without hiding. But hope came with danger. For Harriet to act on this plan, she would need to leave the attic. She would need to move. She would need to risk everything. Meanwhile, Dr. Flint intercepted a different letter addressed to Harriet's brother. Though it revealed nothing about Harriet's hiding place, it reignited his suspicion. He became convinced the family was still in contact with her. His rage returned with full force. He threatened the family, claiming they were hiding her. He spoke of seizing her children, selling them, punishing them. Harriet listened from above as her children cried, as her grandmother pleaded, as Dr. Flint stormed from room to room. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She pressed her forehead to the wooden beams and forced herself not to scream. This was the breaking point. The attic had protected Harriet, but it no longer protected her children. That night she understood something clearly. She could not stay. She had to leave before Dr. Flint's cruelty consumed the people she loved. Life in the attic carved Harriet's body into shapes no human should endure. Her legs stiffened until she could barely bend them. Her back curved unnaturally, strained from years of low ceilings and forced crouching. She lived in positions that twisted her joints and compressed her lungs. Pain became a language her body spoke fluently. Some days she woke unable to feel her feet. Other days, cramps seized her so strongly that she bit her lip to keep from crying out. When summer heat filled the attic, Harriet felt herself drowning in air so thick it barely moved. She couldn't straighten her spine. She couldn't sweat enough to cool her skin. She breathed shallowly, fearing even her breath might make noise. Winter was its own kind of torture. Sharp winds sliced through cracks in the boards, freezing her fingers and stiffening her joints. Ice formed on the nails in the roof. She curled into herself, trying to preserve warmth that wasn't there. But the attic wasn't just physical suffering. It was emotional endurance. Harriet listened to her children play beneath her. She heard them ask questions about where she had gone. She wanted to whisper, "I'm here," but silence protected them more than her presence ever could. Stillness was destroying her body, but saving her family. Years passed before a message reached Harriet that felt like a lifeline. A friend in the North had contacted a network of abolitionists willing to help her escape. The letter carried new possibilities, a chance to finally break free, to stand upright again, to hold her children without hiding. But hope came with danger. For Harriet to act on this plan, she would need to leave the attic. She would need to move. She would need to risk everything. Meanwhile, Dr. Flint intercepted a different letter addressed to Harriet's brother. Though it revealed nothing about Harriet's hiding place, it reignited his suspicion. He became convinced the family was still in contact with her. His rage returned with full force. He threatened the family, claiming they were hiding her. He spoke of seizing her children, selling them, punishing them. Harriet listened from above as her children cried, as her grandmother pleaded, as Dr. Flint stormed from room to room. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She pressed her forehead to the wooden beams and forced herself not to scream. This was the breaking point. The attic had protected Harriet, but it no longer protected her children. That night she understood something clearly. She could not stay. She had to leave before Dr. Flint's cruelty consumed the people she loved. Harriet's freedom depended on a web of people willing to break laws, defy slave catchers, and risk their own safety. Her grandmother was the heart of that network, steady, unshakable, wise. But others gathered around her in secrecy. A sailor who traveled regularly between southern and northern ports offered information on ships that didn't cooperate with slave hunters. A local friend contacted trusted abolitionists who passed messages through coded letters. Neighbors sympathetic to Harriet kept quiet even when questioned. Every small act, every silence, became a shield. Harriet listened from the attic as plans were made beneath her. She learned the rhythms of danger, the sounds of opportunity. She studied the patterns of Dr. Flint's visits. Years of hiding had sharpened her instincts. She could identify footsteps, the creak of familiar boots, the tone of a voice shifting from threat to curiosity. Her allies prepared hiding places, routes, and backup routes. They practiced signals. They devised cover stories. They failed multiple times before narrowing down a real opportunity. Harriet spent her time imagining what walking again would feel like. She practiced breathing deeply. She massaged her numb legs. She prepared her mind for the journey more than her body, because her body was nearly broken. But she was not broken. She was being prepared. The night Harriet finally left her hiding place was quiet, too quiet. No wind, no dogs barking, no footsteps on the road. Her grandmother tapped the ceiling 3 times, their lifelong signal of safety. Harriet felt her heart pound. Her spine ached as she turned her body toward the attic opening. She crawled slowly, muscles trembling. Her joints cracked softly, echoes of a body unused to movement. When she reached the entrance, her grandmother's hands reached up to her, gentle, trembling, guiding her down. Harriet's legs nearly collapsed. 7 years of stillness fought against her weight. She leaned on the woman who had kept her alive all this time. The ground beneath her feet felt unreal, too open, too exposed. But there was no time to adjust. They had to move. Through the doghouse, through the empty street, through shadows that felt too thin to hide in. Harriet moved like someone learning to walk again. Every noise felt magnified. Every lantern flicker threatened exposure, but silence guided her. Silence protected her. She reached a safe house and collapsed behind its door, shaking from exhaustion and fear. The attic had released her, but the journey was only beginning. Harriet's escape was not a single journey. It was a chain of small, dangerous movements. She hid in wagons beneath piles of goods. She crouched behind cargo in carriages. She lay in dark corners of storage rooms, hoping no one would notice her shallow breathing. Her allies guided her from one hiding place to the next, always under cover of night. They whispered directions, warnings, and encouragement. Every mile north felt like a lifetime. Every hour felt like a risk. Her body struggled with movement. Her legs shook violently. Her back burned. Her breathing came in short bursts. She feared fainting in plain sight. But the thought of her children still trapped in the south gave her strength. She reached a port city after days of travel. There, she waited nervously for the moment she could board a ship headed north. The sailor who had promised help kept watch, scanning for authorities or slave catchers. Harriet kept her head down, avoiding eye contact with anyone who might recognize her. When the ship finally prepared to leave, Harriet slipped aboard and disappeared into its lower deck. The smell of salt and wood filled her lungs air she hadn't tasted in years. For the first time in a long time, the horizon was moving, and she was moving with it. The ship's arrival in Philadelphia felt like stepping into a dream. Harriet waited until the others disembarked before emerging from her hiding place. When she finally stepped onto northern soil, her knees almost gave out, not from fear, but from overwhelming relief. Abolitionists who had followed her letters greeted her with kindness and awe. They had heard the story of the woman in the attic. They knew the courage it took to survive. They offered her food, shelter, clothing, and most importantly, safety. But Harriet was still not completely free. Under the Fugitive Slave Act, she could still be captured. Slave catchers roamed northern cities searching for fugitives. So Harriet moved cautiously, staying with trusted families and keeping her location secret. Her first priority was her children. She worked tirelessly to arrange their journey north. She wrote letters, asked for help, and prayed. And then, one morning, her children arrived. Harriet ran to them, embracing them openly in the sunlight, a moment she had dreamed of through a peephole in an attic for 7 years. Her freedom, she realized, was not just her own. It was theirs, too. Harriet's greatest fear came true when Dr. Flint discovered her location. He sent letters demanding her return, threatening legal action, and accusing abolitionists of harboring a fugitive. Harriet read the letters with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Even in freedom, he tried to control her. Then came an unexpected solution. A friend, moved by Harriet's courage and determined to free her from fear, offered to purchase her freedom legally. Harriet was horrified. She didn't want money exchanged for her body. She didn't want the world to believe anyone still owned her. But she also understood the reality. As long as Dr. Flint claimed her, she could be dragged back into slavery at any moment. The decision tormented her. She paced, prayed, and thought for days. Her children begged her to choose safety. Her allies reminded her that freedom on paper could protect not only her, but them too. Finally, Harriet agreed not for herself, but for the people she loved. The purchase went through. Dr. Flint's family accepted the money, and Harriet Jacobs became legally free. It didn't feel like victory, but it felt like release. A chain broken is still a chain, but it no longer holds. Even after reaching the North, Harriet lived with the constant fear that Dr. Flint would appear at any moment. His obsession with capturing her did not end when she escaped the South. It intensified. Harriet learned that he had traveled to northern states, searching for her in hospitals, docks, factories, even boarding houses. He carried her description and questioned strangers. The law was on his side. The Fugitive Slave Act made her a target even in so-called free territory. Harriet moved from house to house, sometimes staying only a few nights before shifting again. Each time a stranger knocked on a door, her heart raced. Each time a carriage passed too slowly, she held her breath. Yet she refused to let fear rule her new life. She began working, earning money for the first time as a free woman. Her children attended school, learned to read, and played without chains or overseers. They laughed freely now, and their laughter healed her in ways sunlight never had. Still, Harriet remained watchful. Freedom required vigilance. She learned which streets to avoid, which allies to trust, and which names to never speak aloud. Not even the North could erase the years she had spent hunted. But she was no longer running alone, and that made her stronger. Harriet's greatest fear came true when Dr. Flint discovered her location. He sent letters demanding her return, threatening legal action, and accusing abolitionists of harboring a fugitive. Harriet read the letters with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Even in freedom, he tried to control her. Then came an unexpected solution. A friend, moved by Harriet's courage and determined to free her from fear, offered to purchase her freedom legally. Harriet was horrified. She didn't want money exchanged for her body. She didn't want the world to believe anyone still owned her. But she also understood the reality. As long as Dr. Flint claimed her, she could be dragged back into slavery at any moment. The decision tormented her. She paced, prayed, and thought for days. Her children begged her to choose safety. Her allies reminded her that freedom on paper could protect not only her, but them too. Finally, Harriet agreed not for herself, but for the people she loved. The purchase went through. Dr. Flint's family accepted the money, and Harriet Jacobs became legally free. It didn't feel like victory, but it felt like release. A chain broken is still a chain, but it no longer holds. With legal freedom secured, Harriet began to rebuild herself in ways she had never imagined. She found work as a nursemaid and caregiver. She volunteered with abolitionist groups, speaking softly but passionately about the realities of enslavement. She supported schools for black children, determined that no child would grow up in darkness as she had. Her children blossomed. Her son learned trades and dreamed of opportunity. Her daughter pursued education with fierce determination. Harriet watched them grow with pride, knowing she had survived the impossible for their sake. Yet the attic lived inside her. Her back ached every morning, a reminder of the cramped wooden prison. In crowds, she felt the old urge to hide. She never slept comfortably. She never forgot the taste of still air or the weight of silence. But she also felt something new: purpose. She realized her story was not just survival. It was testimony. She began writing, quietly at first, shaping sentences that carried the weight of millions. She poured her memories on the paper. The attic, the fear, the letters, the nights without air. Every page hurt. Every page healed. As Harriet wrote her autobiography, she understood the magnitude of what she was doing. Women had rarely written openly about their experiences, and enslaved women almost never had the chance. Her book would not only expose Dr. Flint, it would reveal an entire system built on control, cruelty, and silence. But truth was dangerous. Publishers hesitated. Some feared backlash. Some doubted readers would believe her. Others worried that details were too honest for Victorian audiences. Still, Harriet persisted. She was not writing for them. She was writing for the world that needed to understand. With the support of abolitionist Lydia Maria Child, Harriet's book, Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl, finally took shape. It was raw. It was emotional. It was revolutionary. She told the truth no one wanted to hear, that enslaved women faced horrors beyond physical labor, that they were hunted not just for work but for control of their bodies and lives. Harriet exposed the invisible wounds that had shaped her existence. The world had tried to bury her voice in an attic. Now it would echo on printed pages, forever. When Harriet's book was published in 1861, reactions were immediate. Some praised her bravery. Others dismissed her story as exaggerated. A few accused her of inventing events to attack the South. But many readers, especially women, recognized the truth in her words. They saw themselves in her struggle for dignity, autonomy, and safety. Abolitionists embraced the book as evidence. Newspapers debated it. Lectures quoted it. Harriet's experiences became a powerful weapon against slavery. Her story reached across borders, traveling to England, where she later visited and continued advocating for freedom. But even with recognition, Harriet remained humble. She never sought fame. She simply wanted people to understand what she had endured and what millions still suffered. Her voice, once confined to a hole in an attic, now carried across continents, and the timing was significant. The Civil War had just begun. The nation was splitting apart. Her story became part of a movement much larger than herself. As the Civil War raged, Harriet dedicated herself to helping freedmen enslaved people escaping to Union lines. She traveled to relief camps, cared for the sick, fed children, and advocated for better conditions. She witnessed hope and despair living side by side. Her children joined the cause. Her daughter, Louisa, became a teacher for newly freed black families. Her son worked for the Union. Harriet, once hidden in darkness, now served in the open, unafraid. The war tore apart the world she had known, but it also opened possibilities she had never imagined. Harriet saw freedom spreading city by city, plantation by plantation. She saw families reunited, She saw chains broken for good. And when the Emancipation Proclamation was read, Harriet wept not for herself, but for the millions who would never know the attic, never hide behind walls, never fear the footsteps of men like Dr. Flint again. The world that had hunted her was dying, and a new one was being born. Even after slavery ended, Harriet carried memories that never left her. At night, she sometimes dreamed of the attic dreams where the ceiling pressed against her back, where she couldn't breathe or call out. Sometimes she woke with her hands clenched, gripping imaginary boards. But she also dreamed of sunlight, of open doors, of her children laughing freely. Harriet learned that freedom did not erase trauma. It coexisted with it. She carried both pain and peace in equal measure. But she refused to let the past chain her again. She spent her later years working in schools, raising awareness, and helping families who were still finding their footing after generations of bondage. Her presence brought strength. Her story brought courage. People sought her wisdom. Young women looked up to her. Communities honored her. The woman who once lived in silence now lived in recognition. As Harriet aged, she watched her children and grandchildren grow into lives she could only have dreamed of. They read freely, traveled freely, and lived without fear of being sold or hunted. Harriet saw in them the future she had fought for one attic breath at a time. Her autobiography became a foundational text for historians, abolitionists, and women's rights activists. Scholars quoted her words. Teachers used her story in classrooms. Her name slowly moved from forgotten corners of history into the center of discussions about freedom and justice. The attic, once a tomb of silence, had become a symbol of resilience. Harriet realized something profound. She had not just survived slavery. She had defeated its purpose. Her story ensured that the world would never again ignore the voices of enslaved women. Harriet lived into her early 80s, a remarkable age for someone who had endured so much. In her final years, she remained active, writing letters, mentoring young women, and advocating for racial equality. Her mind remained sharp, her determination unbroken. When she passed away in 1897, her family surrounded her. Her legacy was already alive in the children she had raised, the lives she had touched, the pages she had written. The attic was long gone, the boards rotted, the house changed. But the story had not vanished. Instead, it had grown stronger. The world remembered Harriet Jacobs not as a victim, not as property, not as a fugitive, but as a woman who resisted in the quietest, strongest way possible. She turned hiding into survival, survival into testimony, testimony into power. Harriet Jacobs' life teaches a truth the world must never forget. Freedom is not always won in battlefields or grand speeches. Sometimes it is won in silence, patience, and unbreakable spirit. She entered an attic as a hunted woman. She emerged as a witness, and she left the world as a symbol. Her story continues to inspire movements for justice, women's rights, and equality. Her voice echoes in classrooms, books, and films. And every person who learns her story carries forward a piece of the light she created in the darkest place imaginable. The attic tried to contain her. History tried to forget her. But Harriet Jacobs rose above them both. She lived 7 years in shadows, so others could walk in the sun.